Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling a topic that's, well, absolutely vital for any HR professional, especially for those of you gearing up for the SPHR exam, employee engagement and retention.
Definitely a critical one.
Our mission. Think of this as your ultimate SPHR study guide. We're going to cut through the noise, really distill the essential concepts, the metrics you need to know, the legal side of things, and practical strategies. Basically, how organizations connect with and keep their best people. And hopefully give you a shortcut to truly understanding and remembering this stuff. Plus, point out some common exam traps.
Yeah, it's a great mission because these concepts, engagement and retention, they aren't just buzzwords, are they? They're really the bedrock of a thriving organization.
Right.
So for SPHR candidates, getting a handle on this means understanding the human capital engine that drives success.
Yeah.
It's fundamental.
Absolutely. So let's start there, lay the foundation. When we talk about employee engagement, what are the key things an SPHR candidate really needs to grasp?
Okay, for the exam, think of engagement as that emotional and behavioral commitment an employee has towards their organization, towards its goals. It's not just, clocking in and out.
It's more than just presence.
Exactly. It's feeling connected, feeling motivated, genuinely energized by the work and the workplace. It's like a two-way street, an investment from both sides.
Okay. And working right alongside engagement is motivation. We often hear about intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Why is that distinction so important for HR strategy?
It's crucial because it really dictates how we design jobs, rewards, systems, everything. Intrinsic motivation, that comes from within, right? Personal satisfaction, finding purpose, maybe just genuine interest in the task itself.
Like loving the challenge.
Precisely. And then extrinsic is about the external stuff, pay, benefits, bonuses, recognition. So you might have someone who intrinsically loves solving complex problems, or someone else who's really driven extrinsically by hitting targets for that big bonus.
Got it.
And strategic HR needs to know how to leverage both of those effectively.
That makes total sense. And where these two really come together, I think, is this idea of discretionary effort. That's where you really see engagement and motivation in action, isn't it?
Exactly. That's the perfect term for it. Discretionary effort is when an employee voluntarily gives more. More time, more energy, more thought than is strictly required by the job description.
Going the extra mile.
Yeah, going the extra mile, but not because they have to, but because they genuinely want to out of commitment. It's that initiative, that extra spark. You can't really mandate it. You have to, earn it from your employees.
And thinking bigger picture, this isn't just about one point in time, like hiring or annual reviews. It's woven through their whole experience, right?
Absolutely. You've hit on the employee life cycle. All these concepts, engagement, motivation, discretionary effort, they play out across every single stage.
From the very beginning.
From attraction and recruitment, then through onboarding, their development, retention efforts, and even how they exit the company, the offboarding. Strategic HR tailors strategies for each phase.
Like making onboarding really positive.
Exactly. A great onboarding can boost early engagement significantly. And even a well-handled exit interview while someone's leaving can give you incredibly valuable feedback to help retain the people who stay.
Okay, so if that's the landscape, what are the actual drivers? What really fuels that deep engagement and motivation? What makes employees truly commit?
Well, here's a stat that always gets people's attention, even experienced HR folks preparing for the SPHR. Gallup research found that a team leader accounts for something like 70% of the variance in team engagement.
70%? Wow.
Yeah, 70. Think about that. A single manager can have that much impact, positive or negative. A bad leader can pretty much tank a team's engagement. Its pay and benefits are great elsewhere in the company.
So leadership quality is huge.
It's absolutely critical. Leaders who coach, who recognize effort, who genuinely empower their teams, they build trust and support. This means managers need skills beyond just assigning tasks.
Like communication.
Regular communication, giving honest, constructive feedback, building positive relationships. And empowerment, autonomy studies consistently show that when employees feel trusted and self-sufficient, their engagement goes way up. Servant leadership models often highlight this.
That 70% really drives home that it's not just about the paycheck. It sounds like purpose, feeling connected to something bigger is also key. Is that becoming even more important?
Oh, definitely. Gallup again points to purpose, doing work that feels meaningful, connected to a mission as a top driver. People want to feel their work matters. If they understand and buy into the company's mission, whether that's social impact or customer innovation, they get much more engaged. So for HR, articulating that purpose and linking individual jobs to it is vital.
And alongside purpose, feeling valued. That seems crucial too, which often connects to recognition. What kind of recognition actually works? Is it just about money?
Not at all. Meaningful recognition goes way beyond just the salary. Again, Gallup's data shows that timely, authentic acknowledgement, just noticing good work, boosts engagement, productivity, and loyalty.
Which leads to better retention.
Exactly. It doesn't always have to be a huge bonus. A manager who regularly praises contributions, maybe publicly in a team meeting, maybe just privately, reinforces positive behaviors and shows the company actually sees their effort. It feels good to be seen.
So, strong leadership, clear purpose, genuine recognition. What other pieces contribute to that truly engaging environment an SPHR Pro should be thinking about?
Well, you can't forget career development and growth opportunities. People want to learn. They want to see the path forward.
Right.
Fairness and transparency are huge, too, in pay, promotions, decision-making. And underpinning it all is a supportive culture, an environment where people feel treated equitably, where collaboration is encouraged and learning is supported, that motivates people to stay and give their best. These are all levers HR can strategically pull.
Okay, so we've covered how to engage talent. Now, the big question for HR. How do we make sure that engagement translates into people actually staying long-term? Let's talk retention programs. What do those look like strategically?
Good strategic retention programs are usually pretty comprehensive. They often include things like robust mentoring or career pathing initiatives to show people a future. Flexible work arrangements are increasingly important for work-life balance. Obviously, competitive compensation and benefits are table stakes, but also things like employee recognition events, leadership development programs.
And these target why people leave.
Ideally, yes. Research, like from Indeed, shows that most voluntary turnover people choosing to leave happens for reasons that are often avoidable. Lack of career growth, poor work-life balance, feeling underpaid.
So a good strategy hits those directly.
Exactly. It also involves strategic workforce planning. HR needs to identify high-risk roles, maybe critical skill sets, and proactively implement targeted programs. That could be retention bonuses or maybe creating internal mobility options to keep top talent challenged within the company.
Okay, this brings up something important for SPHR candidates. We all know about exit interviews conducted when someone leaves. But what about stay interviews? They sound much more proactive.
Oh, they absolutely are. I'd call them a game changer, honestly. A stay interview is basically a structured one-on-one conversation between a manager and an employee.
Okay.
The specific goal is to explore why the employee stays and what might potentially make them leave in the future.
So you do it before they're thinking of leaving.
Precisely. That's the key difference from an exit interview. It's proactive. Best practices, keep it confidential, make sure it's not evaluative like a performance review. Listen actively, take notes, and this is critical act on the feedback you get.
Right, the follow-through matters.
Immensely. If, say, multiple people mention lack of advancement opportunities, maybe HR needs to look at creating clearer promotion paths. When done well, stay interviews boost engagement and retention because employees feel heard and see the company cares. Plus, they often uncover specific issues, maybe outdated equipment, or a need for more recognition that broad surveys might miss. They feed directly into strategic workforce planning.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we're putting in all this effort.
Yeah.
How do we actually measure if it's working? What are the key HR metrics an SPHR Pro absolutely needs to know for engagement and retention?
Metrics are non-negotiable for strategic HR. Let's start with turnover rate. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
It's the percentage of employees who leave during a specific period.
Okay.
Now, you've got voluntary turnover, the employee chooses to leave, and involuntary, where the employer initiates it. But for SPHR, the critical distinction is functional versus dysfunctional turnover.
Explain that difference.
Functional turnover is losing low performers or maybe roles that aren't needed anymore. It can actually be neutral or even positive for the organization. Dysfunctional turnover is losing your high performers, your critical talent. That's the warning sign.
Gotcha. Losing 2 underperformers is different than losing your top analysts.
Exactly. The impact is vastly different. And the formula to remember, it's number of separations during the period, average number of employees during that period, x 100. So 5 people leave in a department that average 50 employees, that's a 10% turnover rate.
Okay, average number of employees, not just the starting or ending number. Important detail for the exam.
Crucial detail. And the flip side, showing stability, is the retention rate.
Right.
Retention rate is simply the percentage of employees who stay with the organization over a period. Shows you your overall stability. Formula. Number of employees at the end of the period, number of employees at the start of the period, S100.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Start with 100, end with 95. That's 95% retention. Helps
Okay.
HR track stability, compare different teams, and see where retention efforts might be needed most.
And finally, for a quick measure of engagement itself, what's the go-to?
That would be the Employee Net Promoter Score, or ENPS. It boils down to one key question. On a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend this organization as a great place to work?
Okay, the classic NPS question, but for employees.
Exactly. Responses get categorized. 9s and 10s are promoters, 7s and 8s are passives, and 0 through 6 are detractors.
And the calculation.
The ENPS formula is simply percent promoters, percent detractors. Critically, you ignore the passives in the calculation.
Okay, so promoters minus detractors.
Right. So if you survey 500 people and get 250 promoters, that's 50%, and 100 detractors, that's 20%, your ENPS is 50 minus 20, which equals 30.
And what's a good score?
Generally, scores from 10 to 30 are considered good, and anything over 50 is usually seen as excellent. But the real value is tracking the trend over time to see if your initiatives are moving the needle. Tracking these metrics lets strategic HR forecast potential problems and measure the impact of interventions.
Now, beyond best practices and metrics, SPHR pros have to operate within a pretty significant legal framework, especially in the U.S. How do key laws shape engagement and retention strategies?
They absolutely form the foundation. You can't build trust without legal compliance. Take employment at will. It's the default in most states, meaning either the employer or employee can end the relationship for any reason, as long as it's not an illegal one.
Which sounds a bit insecure for employees.
It can. So, Smart HR mitigates that insecurity by establishing really clear performance management processes, maybe notice periods, things that build predictability and trust, which are essential for retention.
Okay. And what about employees discussing work issues, maybe even thinking about organizing? That's often a sensitive area.
That brings us to the National Labor Relations Act, the NLRA, which goes way back to 1935. It protects employees' rights to organize, join unions, bargain collectively, and importantly, engage in concerted activities for mutual aid or protection.
Meaning?
Meaning employers absolutely cannot interfere with, restrain, or coerce employees exercising these rights. A key SPHR takeaway. Even if you don't have a union, employees generally have a legal right to discuss things like wages and working conditions. Respecting that right is non-negotiable for building trust. Trying to shut down those conversations is a major legal risk.
Got it. Then there's the basics. Fair pay, fair hours. Seems fundamental.
It is. That's covered by the Fair Labor Standards Act, the FLSA, from 1938. It mandates the federal minimum wage, overtime pay for non-exempt employees. Getting employee classification right, exempt versus non-exempt, is critical for HR.
And the impact on engagement.
Fair and timely pay is foundational. Violations don't just lead to lawsuits and back pay, they absolutely destroy trust and engagement.
And ensuring everyone gets a fair shot, preventing discrimination.
That's primarily Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It prohibits discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin in all aspects of employment. Building non-discriminatory, inclusive environments isn't just the right thing to do, it's directly linked to engagement and retention. Violations obviously mean legal trouble, but they also poison the culture.
And finally, making sure the workplace is accessible.
Yes, the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, from 1990, prohibits discrimination against qualified individuals with disabilities and requires employers to provide reasonable accommodations.
And the link to retention there.
Beyond compliance, actively embracing the ADA and creating truly inclusive workplaces often leads to better retention. There's data showing businesses that accommodate disabled employees see significant increases in retention. So how do all these laws underpin engagement? It's simple. Compliance equals fairness. Fairness builds trust. Without that trust, engagement and retention efforts are built on shaky ground.
Okay, so putting it all together, how does strategic HR actually apply all these insights day to day? And maybe more importantly, for our listeners studying for the SPHR, what are those common traps or pitfalls they need to watch out for on the exam itself?
Great question. Strategically, HR uses these insights in several ways. Talent segmentation is one, identifying high potentials and giving them focused development, maybe different retention tactics for critical roles versus others.
Using data.
Absolutely. Data analysis is huge. HR analytics can pinpoint departments or roles with low engagement or high turnover, allowing for targeted interventions instead of just blanket policies. Companies use engagement surveys systematically, think Gallup's Q12 or Google's data-heavy people operations approach to get real insights.
And focusing on managers again.
Definitely. Since managers have such a massive impact, strategic HR invests heavily in leadership development. training managers specifically on coaching, communication, and recognition skills. And crucially, linking HR initiatives to business outcomes. Remember that Gallup stat, highly engaged teams being up to 21% more profitable. That demonstrates HR's strategic value.
Okay, now let's really sharpen the focus for our SPHR listeners. The exam pitfalls. What are the common distractors or tricky questions related to engagement and retention? This is where remembering the details really counts.
All right, let's break down the traps. First, turnover versus retention confusion. The exam loves to test your understanding of the different types of turnover and the calculations.
Like functional versus dysfunctional.
Exactly. Know the difference. Functional, losing poor performers, can be okay. Dysfunctional, losing top talent, is bad. And watch the formulas. Remember, turnover rate typically uses the average number of employees over the period, not just the end number. They'll try to trip you up on that.
Got it. Average. What else?
Second, ENPS miscalculation. So easy to get wrong under pressure. Remember the formula. ENPS, percent promoters, percent detractors. You must ignore the passives.
Ignore the 7s and 8s.
Right, they'll put answer choices that mistakenly include passives. Also, know the score range is -100 to +100.
Okay. What about the legal side?
Third, law-related traps. Scenario questions will describe a situation and ask which law was violated. You need to pick the correct federal law. Punishing employees for discussing pay, that's likely NLRA, not Title VII or FLSA. Also, don't confuse employment at will with right-to-work laws. They're different things. And a big one. Remember, U.S. federal law generally does not mandate perks like paid vacation or severance, unless it's in a contract or company policy. Exam distractors love to imply these are legally required.
Good point. Best practices versus legal mandates.
Precisely. Which leads to the fourth trap. Program versus policy confusion. Understand what's a common HR best practice, like offering a stay bonus, versus what's legally required. And always remember, the SPHR is U.S.-centric. Don't get sidetracked by global HR practices unless the question specifically asks for that context, which is rare for these topics.
And finally,
A quick jargon check. Make sure you know the precise definitions of terms like discretionary effort, that extra voluntary effort, and know the commonly accepted stages of the employee life cycle: attraction, recruitment, onboarding, development, retention, offboarding. Don't pick an answer that throws in a random, unrelated phase.
excellent tips. Okay, to really lock this in for everyone studying, let's quickly run through a few typical SPHR-style scenario examples.
Perfect. Let's do it. Scenario 1. A company has 200 employees. Last year, 20 employees left West. 12 voluntarily quit. 8 were laid off. Of those who quit voluntarily, 3 were identified as top performers, while 9 were consistent underperformers. How would you best characterize the turnover?
Okay, so total separations are 20 out of 200. That's a 10% overall turnover rate. But the key is the voluntary part. 9 underperformers left versus only 3 top performers. That strongly suggests that most of the voluntary turnover was actually functional, maybe even good for the company. So I look for an answer reflecting 10% overall turnover with primarily functional voluntary turnover.
Spot on. That's the analysis they're looking for. Okay, scenario 2. A company surveys its 500 employees using the ENPS question. The results: 250 promoters, scores 9-10, 150 passives, scores 7-8, and 100 detractors, scores 0-6. What is the company's ENPS?
Right, ENPS calculation. First, percentages. 250 promoters out of 500 is 50%. 100 detractors out of 500 is 20%. We ignore the 150 passives. Formula is percent promoters minus percent detractors. So 50% minus 20% equals 30. The ENPS is 30.
Perfect. Don't fall for distractors that include the passives. Okay, scenario 3. An assistant manager overhears a couple of employees in the break room discussing the possibility of contacting a union organizer. The next day, citing vague performance issues, the manager writes up both employees with formal warnings. Which law is most likely implicated?
This sounds like retaliation for protected activity. Discussing unionizing is generally protected under the NLRA as concerted activity. Retaliating against employees for that discussion is a classic NLRA violation.
Exactly. National Labor Relations Act. Good. Last one, scenario 4. An HR department wants to implement an initiative specifically aimed at boosting discretionary effort and employee engagement. Which of the following actions is most aligned with achieving that goal? A. Implementing stricter performance monitoring. B. Announcing a across-the-board cost of living salary increase. C. Launching a program to empower frontline employees with more decision-making authority in their roles. D. Improving the exit interview process to gather more data.
Okay, discretionary effort links closely to intrinsic motivation, trust, and autonomy. Stricter monitoring works against that. A salary increase is extrinsic, might help retention, but not necessarily discretionary effort. Exit interviews are reactive. Empowering employees, giving them autonomy, option C, directly taps into those intrinsic drivers and trust factors that boost engagement and encourage people to go the extra mile. So C.
Precisely. Empowerment is key there.
Great examples. And that, I think, brings us toward the end of this SPHR deep dive on employee engagement and retention.
We covered a lot of ground.
We really did. We hit the foundational definitions: engagement, motivation, discretionary effort. We explored those critical drivers like leadership, purpose, recognition, dived into retention tools like stay interviews, crunched the key metrics: turnover, retention, ENPS, and navigated that crucial U.S. legal landscape. And hopefully armed you with some solid SPHR exam insights and pitfalls to watch out for.
Yeah, and maybe this raises a final important question for you, the listener, to think about. Beyond just passing the SPHR exam, valuable as that is, how might truly internalizing these concepts, really getting engagement and retention, transform how you approach building a workplace culture? A culture where people don't just stay, but genuinely want to contribute their absolute best, ultimately driving the success of your organization.
That's a powerful thought for any current or future HR leader to chew on. Keep digging into this stuff, keep discovering, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.